The Young and the Restless spoilers shock Friday's full September 26, 2025. Jack Abbott had been through enough turmoil in his lifetime to know that moments of peace were fleeting, yet that only made him savor them more. As autumn settled over Genoa City, he found himself drawn even closer to Diane Jenkins, the woman who had once caused him immeasurable pain but who now stood as his greatest source of stability. Their shared history was littered with betrayal, absence, and bitter confrontations, but against all odds, they had arrived at a place of warmth. Jack relished the quiet mornings when Diane would appear at the Abbott mansion, her presence softening the edges of his hardened life. Those around them still doubted the endurance of this reunion, but Jack was determined to prove them wrong. He saw in Diane not the ghost of the past but the possibility of a future, and he clung to that possibility with a conviction that bordered on defiance. Every tender glance, every whispered reassurance was a rebellion against the skeptics who thought their love was destined to collapse. Yet even in these rare moments of happiness, storm clouds were gathering elsewhere in Genoa City, threatening to drag the Abbotts back into another cycle of chaos. Kyle Abbott, Jack's son, found himself once again in the orbit of Audra Charles, a woman who had become the sharpest thorn in his side. Their interactions had long since passed the point of civility. Audra delighted in dismantling Kyle's sense of self, needling him with remarks that targeted not just his current failures, but the legacy he carried as an Abbott. She called him a failure in business, a disappointment as a partner, and a man unworthy of the powerful name he bore. To Kyle, these words were more than insults, they were assaults on his very identity, reminders of the insecurities he tried to bury beneath charm and ambition. Audra knew exactly where to strike, and each encounter left him simmering with anger and humiliation. The once confident young executive, who had dreamed of conquering the corporate world alongside his father, now found himself adrift, tormented by the fear that maybe Audra was right. Maybe he was destined to live in Jack's shadow, never quite measuring up, never quite escaping the cycle of disappointment. His turmoil was something Diane noticed too, and though she tried to shield her son from the harsh judgments of others, Kyle's battles were his own to fight. And Audra, relentless and calculating, seemed determined to push him until he broke. Elsewhere, the drama in Genoa City took a darker turn as Michael Baldwin prepared to reveal truths that had long been shrouded in secrecy. For years, Michael had walked the tightrope between loyalty and betrayal, his allegiance often shifting depending on circumstance, opportunity, or survival. His wife, Lauren Fenmore, had stood by him through scandals and reinventions, but even she had begun to suspect that the man she loved was concealing something monumental. Whispers of a secret society, of clandestine gatherings and whispered deals, had reached her ears, and though Michael attempted to laugh it off, Lauren's instincts told her that this time the rumors carried weight. She cornered him one evening after one of his extravagant soirees, demanding the truth. Michael, ever the master manipulator, tried to deflect by popping open a bottle of champagne, toasting to their resilience as a couple, and pulling her into a dance meant to distract her heart and cloud her judgment. The glittering surface of their marriage sparkled in that moment, but beneath the champagne bubbles and elegant music, tension pulsed like a live wire. Lauren was not a woman easily distracted, nor was she willing to allow Michael's evasions to derail her resolve. As they moved across the dance floor, her voice was low, almost tender, but sharp as a blade. She wanted to know what he was hiding. She wanted to know where he had been in those mysterious stretches of absence when he disappeared without explanation. Her suspicion grew sharper when she suggested that perhaps Victor Newman was involved, pulling strings in the background as he had done so many times before. Lauren's eyes searched Michael's face for cracks, for even the smallest flicker of guilt. She warned him, in no uncertain terms, that lies would not be tolerated. If he betrayed her trust now, there would be no repairing what was broken. Michael's smile faltered only briefly, but Lauren caught it. She knew there was more at stake than he was willing to admit. She had always admired his brilliance and resourcefulness, but those same qualities made him dangerous when turned toward deception. If Victor had indeed coaxed Michael back into his web of manipulation, Lauren would find out, and the fallout could destroy not just her marriage but her faith in the life they had built together. The idea of Michael being drawn into a secretive order in Genoa City was not entirely outlandish. The city had always been fertile ground for conspiracies and power struggles, and Michael's hunger for influence had often outweighed his better judgment. He thrived on proximity to power, and no one embodied power quite like Victor Newman. The possibility that Michael had once again allied himself with Victor sent shivers down Lauren's spine. She had fought too hard to stand as her own woman, too long to remain tethered to a husband whose loyalties bent with the wind. Yet, in her heart, there lingered a deep and complicated love, one that kept her hoping Michael's secrets were less damning than they appeared. As she pressed him for answers, he countered with charm and half-truths, promising nothing, confessing nothing, but weaving just enough tenderness into his words to keep her from walking away. It was the oldest dance between them, one of suspicion and forgiveness, of betrayal and reconciliation. But Lauren's patience was thinning, and Michael's ability to deceive was reaching its limits. Meanwhile, Jack's renewed commitment to Diane placed him in stark contrast to his son's spiraling crisis. Where Jack sought stability and warmth, Kyle wrestled with insecurity and public humiliation. The Abbotts stood as a family on the brink of a generational divide, their lives woven together yet strained by conflicting ambitions and fragile egos. Audra's relentless campaign to undermine Kyle was not simply cruelty, it was strategy. She knew that destabilizing the younger Abbott would send ripples through the entire family, weakening their united front against external threats. Jack's happiness with Diane was genuine, but even he could not ignore the storm building around his son. The irony was sharp. At the very moment Jack rediscovered love, his son was losing his grip on everything that had once given him purpose. In the grand tapestry of Genoa City, no character moved in isolation. Michael's secrets had the potential to intertwine with Victor's machinations, perhaps even impacting the Abbott family's tenuous unity. If Michael was indeed acting on Victor's behalf, could his maneuvers somehow intersect with the corporate wars and personal vendettas that defined the Abbotts' lives? Lauren's threat to end her marriage if Michael lied might push him into desperate choices that could reverberate far beyond the walls of their home. And if Kyle continued to falter under Audra's ruthless scrutiny, Jack might be forced to choose between protecting his son's pride and protecting his own fragile happiness with Diane. Soap operas thrived on these interconnected crises, and the young and the restless had perfected the art of weaving individual struggles into an inescapable web of drama. The question was never if the truth would come out, but when and who would be left standing when it did. Michael Baldwin had always been a man of contradictions, balancing his razor-sharp intellect with a charm that could disarm almost anyone. But Lauren Fenmore knew him better than anyone alive, and she could tell when his smile was nothing more than a mask. The evening had begun with laughter, champagne, and a dance designed to distract her from the gnawing suspicion that her husband was keeping something monumental from her. She pressed him for answers, and he dodged, weaving through their conversation with artful misdirection. Yet even the most accomplished lawyer could not keep up the act forever. The tension was interrupted by the buzzing of Michael's phone, and Lauren noticed the way his expression shifted when he saw the name flashing across the screen. Their son, Fen, was calling. Michael stepped away for a moment, answering in a tone that was forcedly light but heavy with underlying strain. Lauren watched him carefully, every fiber of her intuition sharpening as she heard fragments of the conversation. When Michael returned, she insisted that it was time for the truth. She had waited long enough, and their marriage could not survive another wall of lies. It was then, under the weight of her determination and the echo of their son's voice still lingering in the air, that Michael finally broke. His shoulders sagged, his facade crumbled, and he confessed the secret that had been haunting him. Cain Ashby, a man long known for his tangled history of betrayal and redemption, was plotting something so destructive it threatened to unravel the very fabric of Genoa City. Cain is trying to destroy the city as we know it, Michael admitted grimly, and I may be the only one capable of stopping him. The words hung in the air like smoke, poisoning the space between them. Lauren felt a chill run through her veins as the weight of her husband's revelation settled. This was no longer about their marriage alone, it was about the future of everyone they knew, everything they loved. And yet, in the back of her mind, a question twisted like a knife. Was Michael telling her the full truth at last, or merely another version designed to keep her tethered to him? Meanwhile, across town at the jazz club, a storm of a different nature was brewing. Kyle Abbott, still reeling from Audra Charles's endless campaign to cut him down, confronted her with a fury that had been building for weeks. He accused her of being incapable of genuine connection. reminding her that Nate Hastings had eventually seen through her manipulations and had been smart enough to deliver a blow she could not recover from. Kyle's voice carried not just anger but desperation, the sound of a man trying to reclaim control of a narrative slipping out of his hands. But Audra was not one to crumble under fire. She leaned in, her words dripping with venom and precision, reminding Kyle of his own failures. How many marriages had he destroyed? How many divorces littered the path of his so-called love life? It was a ruthless counterattack, one that dug into wounds Kyle barely kept stitched together. He tried to deflect, insisting he didn't know what she was talking about, but the smug smile on her face told him she had hit the mark. At that exact moment, fate twisted the knife further, as Jack Abbott and Diane Jenkins descended the club's staircase, their timing impeccable to witness the brutal exchange. The scene that unfolded before them was one no parent should ever have to witness. Audra's voice cut through the air with icy precision, telling Kyle that he had failed in every relationship he had ever touched. And then, with cruel delight, she reminded him of the one truth he could not escape: his fragile bond with Claire was on the verge of shattering. Claire, the woman who had once anchored him, was slipping away into the arms of Holden, and there was nothing Kyle could do to stop it. Audra twisted the knife further by invoking their own entanglement, hinting at moments they had shared in vulnerable intimacy. "You lied to me," she said, the words laced with accusation and seduction all at once. "You were in bed with me, with nothing but a towel between us." The shock of her words reverberated through the room, and Jack and Diane stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, their faces pale with the weight of what they had just overheard. Jack's instincts as a father surged to the forefront. He stepped forward, placing a firm hand on Kyle's shoulder, pulling him away from Audra's venomous presence. His protective rage was barely contained as he tried to shield his son from further humiliation. But before he could lead Kyle to safety, Diane interjected, her expression a storm of conflicting emotions. She turned not on Audra, but on Jack, demanding that he let Kyle stand on his own. Audra, sensing an opportunity, mocked the dynamic, suggesting that Diane should control her son more effectively if she wanted to save him from his own failures. That was the breaking point. Diane, her voice trembling with fury, declared that she would not be silenced nor intimidated. She stood her ground, eyes blazing, and told Audra to stay away from her son. The room fell silent as Diane accused Audra of harboring her own twisted desire, of wanting Kyle for herself. Diane's words sliced through the tension, exposing the undercurrent of jealousy and possession that had defined Audra's interactions with Kyle from the beginning. "But you will never have him," Diane declared, her voice unwavering. The jazz club had become a battlefield, every word another bullet, every revelation another wound. For Jack, the moment was a painful fracture. He had fought so hard to build something meaningful with Diane, to prove to his family and the world that their love was real and enduring. Yet here they were, tearing at each other in public, their unity splintering under the weight of secrets, accusations, and divided loyalties. Jack's attempt to protect Kyle clashed violently with Diane's need to defend her son in her own way, and the result was a rupture that neither of them had anticipated. In the space of a few minutes, what had been a carefully constructed reconciliation threatened to collapse into ashes. Jack's face reflected anguish as he realized that his relationship with Diane might not survive the fallout. They had shared moments of tenderness and joy, but in Genoa City, happiness was fragile, and the truth always came at a cost. The night's events rippled outward, their consequences spreading like cracks through glass. For Kyle, the humiliation of Audra's words and the collapse of his parents' fragile unity deepened his spiral. For Diane, the confrontation reinforced her belief that Audra was a threat not only to Kyle but to the entire Abbott family. And for Jack, the fear that history was repeating itself clawed at his heart. Even as he tried to hold his family together, the specter of betrayal loomed, reminding him that the past was never truly buried. And beyond the Abbotts, Michael and Lauren's world had shifted irrevocably. The revelation about Kane Ashby hinted at a storm that could engulf not just them but all of Genoa City. Kane's destructive ambition, Michael's reluctant entanglement, and Lauren's demand for truth were threads woven into the same tapestry of chaos that bound the Abbotts, Audra, and everyone else caught in the relentless drama of the young and the restless. Diane returned to the table at the jazz club, her expression taut after the confrontation with Audra, only to catch the tail end of the conversation between Jack and Kyle. Jack's voice carried a gravity that immediately drew her focus. He was telling his son that Billy had declared war on Kane Ashby, a revelation that struck like a thunderclap. The name Kane alone was enough to raise alarm, but to hear that Billy was openly in conflict with him meant that the fragile balance of Genoa City's power struggles was about to tip once again. Ka stiffened, still raw from Audra's attacks, and asked whether they could really trust Billy to follow through on anything that resembled loyalty to the Emmets. Diane, unsettled but sharp, pressed Jack for details, demanding to know if his brother's newfound aggression was truly in the service of their family or just another reckless detour in his endless cycle of obsession. It was at this precise moment that Sally Spectra, seated nearby, overheard the name Kane Ashby whispered in urgent tones. Her ears pricked with curiosity and dread. Rising from her seat, she approached cautiously, asking Jack outright whether it was true. But before Jack could respond, Sally's phone lit up. The name on the screen was enough to make her heart race. Billy. He was calling, asking to meet. She hesitated for only a moment, then excused herself, knowing she would not be able to resist the pull of closure, or perhaps the lure of answers she had craved for weeks. As Sally moved away, Audra slipped into the empty chair at her table, her eyes glittering with satisfaction. She wasted no time in needling Sally with words designed to break down her resolve. Audra leaned in close, her voice low but filled with malice, warning Sally that if she went to meet Billy, she would be dragged down with him. "That's exactly what will happen," Audra said, with the certainty of someone who thrived on destruction. Sally, however, was caught in the throes of her own conflicted loyalty. Part of her longed to walk away, to heed the warning, to cut ties with the chaos Billy represented. But another part of her that still carried remnants of love, regret, and unresolved wounds compelled her to go. Against all better judgment, Sally left the jazz club and made her way to the city's observatory, a place where secrets were spoken in whispers beneath the stars. There, beneath the dim glow of the night sky, she found Billy waiting. His posture was tense, his expression torn between defiance and remorse. Sally wasted no time. She told him plainly that she had confessed everything to Jack and Diane, laying bare the truth he had wanted her to conceal. Billy flinched at the words, his eyes narrowing in anger before softening with the heavy weight of self-awareness. He admitted that in the beginning, he had seen her confession as a betrayal, a knife to the trust he thought he had secured. But now, after time and reflection, he realized that the true betrayal had been his own. He had led her down a path of destruction, blinded by his vendetta against Kane, and in doing so, he had betrayed the woman he claimed to love. His voice cracked with an intensity Sally had not heard in years, a rawness that suggested not just regret but transformation. Sally, ever skeptical, studied him with a wary eye. She asked what had changed, whether his so-called epiphany was genuine or merely another fleeting turn in the endless cycle of Billy's obsessions. "Any deal I had with Kane is permanently over," he said firmly, his voice carrying a conviction that startled even himself. "You are what I want. You are what I need." The words hung in the air, thick with longing, yet weighed down by the gravity of their shared history. Billy reached for her hand, pleading for forgiveness, but Sally recoiled, her heart a battlefield of conflicting emotions. She told him she wasn't sure she could forgive him, that too much had been said, too much broken. She reminded him that he had lied to her about Jack's withdrawal of financial support, twisting the truth to serve his vendetta. Billy accepted her anger with surprising grace, acknowledging that her rage was justified. He admitted that he was angrier at himself than at anyone else, furious at the way he had squandered his career, a career he once loved, for the sake of one reckless obsession. Sally's voice rose with frustration, reminding him of the man he had once been, the passion he had once poured into his work, and the way he had thrown it all away because Kane had whispered promises and temptations into his ear.